Days before the newest, grandest theater in Chicago opened its doors, a fire captain named Patrick Jennings walked through it and did not like what he saw. There were no sprinklers, no fire alarm, no telephone. The standpipes on the walls were not even connected to water. In a theater built to hold more than 1,600 people, the only firefighting equipment he could find was 6 small tubes of powder, the kind sold to put out a chimney fire in a house. He reported it. He was told nothing could be done because the theater already had a fireman on staff. 5 weeks later, at a holiday matinee packed with women and children, 602 of them would not go home. The theater had been advertised to the public as absolutely fireproof. This is the story of the Iroquois Theatre, the deadliest single-building fire in American history. It is the story of how a building sold as fireproof killed more people than the Great Chicago Fire. And it is the reason that every emergency exit you have ever pushed open has a metal bar across it that opens under the weight of your own body. On the afternoon of the 30th of December, 1903, close to 2,000 people filled the Iroquois Theatre in downtown Chicago. It was the week between Christmas and New Year. Schools were out, and the house was full of mothers and children come to see a musical called Mr. Bluebeard. Many were standing in the aisles, in a building meant to seat 1,600. During the second act, a spotlight high above the stage threw a spark into a thin muslin curtain. A small flame appeared, no bigger than the ones the stagehands had swatted out before. This time it climbed. Within minutes, the entire fly gallery above the stage was on fire, and thousands of square feet of painted canvas scenery were burning. What happened over the next 8 minutes killed 602 people. Almost none of them were burned to death. They died at the doors, because the Iroquois was not, in any real sense, fireproof. It had been finished in a hurry to catch the holiday crowd, and it had been signed off despite a fire captain, a house fireman, and a trade magazine all warning that it was a death trap waiting to happen. This is what they knew, and when they knew it. The Iroquois opened on the 23rd of November, 1903, and it was magnificent. 60 feet of marble and mahogany in the lobby, a grand staircase, a promenade. The owners called it a temple of beauty, and their advertisements gave it one more promise: absolutely fireproof. The man who designed it, the architect Benjamin Marshall, had studied other theater fires. He knew what killed people in them, and yet the building he delivered was missing nearly everything that would have mattered. There were no sprinklers, though the law expected them. There was no fire alarm box, and no telephone to call the fire department. The standpipes were dry. Above the stage, where a fire would naturally rise, there were ventilator flues built to open and vent the smoke and heat to the sky. They had been nailed shut. Marshall did not want exit signs either. He thought they would spoil the look of the auditorium. This is what Captain Patrick Jennings found when he walked through the theater before it opened. No water, no alarm, no way to call for help, and 6 tubes of chimney powder against a stage hung with canvas and wood. He carried his concerns up to a battalion chief. The answer came back that nothing could be done, because the theater already employed its own fireman. That fireman was a man named William Sellers, and he had seen the same things Jennings had. But Sellers had already been fired once from another theater for being too zealous about safety. He was afraid to go over the theater's head to the fire chief, and so he did not. They were not the only ones. An inspector writing for a trade journal called Fireproof magazine toured the building during construction and listed what he saw: no shaft to draw a stage fire upward, an exposed and unprotected arch over the stage, wood trim on everything, and not nearly enough ways out. He printed it before the fire, not after. 3 warnings. A fire captain, the theater's own fireman, and a fire safety magazine. Every one of them, in writing or in person, before a single ticket was sold. And every one of them set aside, because the Iroquois was already open, already selling out, and already making money. At 3:15, during a number called In the Pale Moonlight, an arc light on the left side of the stage sparked into the muslin drapery beside it. The lamp had been mounted too close to the fabric. The man operating it had said so before, and nothing had been changed. A stagehand saw the flame and reached for it, the way he had reached for small sparks before. It was already too high to touch. It ran up the muslin and into the fly gallery, into the hanging forest of painted canvas scenery, and in under 2 minutes the whole space above the stage was a wall of fire. There was still a way to save the audience. Above the stage hung a safety curtain, a heavy sheet meant to drop between the stage and the seats and seal the fire away. Stagehands hauled on it. It came down partway, and then it stopped. Something on the proscenium arch, most likely a protruding light reflector, had caught it. It hung there, jammed, with a gap of some 500 square feet open beneath it. And the curtain would not have saved them anyway. It had been sold as asbestos, but a chemist who tested it afterward found it was mostly wood pulp. In his words, it was of no value in a fire. On the stage, the comedian Eddie Foy, half in costume, walked out in front of the burning scenery and begged the crowd to stay calm. He called for the orchestra to keep playing. He called out for someone, anyone, to lower the curtain that was already stuck above his head. He stayed until the fire was falling around him. Then the fire did the one thing the building was built to prevent. The vents above the stage were nailed shut, so the heat could not rise and escape. And as the actors fled out the great rear doors of the stage, the freezing December air rushed in behind them, low and fast. With nowhere to go up and cold air driving in from below, the fire took the only path left. A ball of flame was pushed out under the jammed curtain, over the heads of the people in the front stalls and straight into the balconies at the back, where it struck like a blast furnace. The people up there had done nothing wrong. They had simply bought the cheaper seats. And now they turned to run. What they found when they ran was that the building had been sealed against them. The doors to the stairways that led down from the upper galleries were blocked by iron gates, folding accordion gates of the kind used to close a shop. They had been installed to stop people in the cheap seats from slipping down into the expensive ones during a show. They were padlocked. The superintendent later admitted he kept the only keys. Behind those gates, people piled up in the dark and the smoke and could not get through. The ones who reached the outer doors met a second trap. The exit doors did not push open the way a door should. They were fitted with an unfamiliar European latch, a lever the average person had never seen and could not work in a panic. Some doors opened inward, so that the crush of bodies pressing toward them held them shut. One door was finally forced only because a man in the crowd happened to have the same strange latch on the icebox at home and knew the trick of it. Some of the exits could not be found at all. They had been hidden behind heavy draperies to keep the auditorium looking elegant, and in the smoke, people ran their hands along the walls and felt only cloth. In one passage that looked like a way out, but was not, around 200 people were found afterward. At the back of the theatre, a set of fire escapes led down into a narrow alley. They were unfinished. The iron ladders ended above the ground or twisted underfoot. People fell or jumped onto the icy stones below, and those who came after fell onto them. Across that alley stood a building of Northwestern University, and students inside pushed a ladder and then wooden planks across the gap to the theatre's fire escape. A dozen people crawled across the boards to safety before a column of fire came through and cut the bridge off. The fire itself was out in about 15 minutes. When the firemen finally got inside, they found the auditorium barely burned. The seats were scorched, but the wood was mostly whole. The theatre had not been consumed. It was the people who were gone. They had died in 8 minutes, at gates and doors and false exits, of smoke and crushing and the cold fall into the alley. Not the flames. The building. 602 people were dead, most of them women and children, in a theatre that had been open for 5 weeks. And almost at once, the people responsible began to disappear. The night after the fire, the coroner discovered a notice posted at the hotel where the theatre company was staying. It ordered the cast and crew to leave Chicago at short notice. It was, he concluded, an attempt to scatter the witnesses before they could testify. 12 theatre employees were arrested. 4 of them admitted they had been told by management to leave town and had already packed their trunks. The grand jury handed down indictments. The theatre's owner and manager, the city's building commissioner, and one of his inspectors. It was alleged that fire inspectors had been given free tickets in exchange for looking the other way, though that was never proven. The mayor of Chicago himself was called before the coroner's jury. And in the end, not one of them was punished. The cases dragged on for years, worn down by the syndicate's lawyers, who pointed out that the building had, on paper, satisfied a city code that was riddled with holes. By 1907, the charges were quietly gone. The manager was tried and acquitted. The only man who went to jail over the Iroquois was a saloon keeper who was caught robbing the bodies while his bar was being used as a morgue. But the dead changed the country anyway, in a way the courtrooms never did. Within weeks, Chicago shut its theaters and rewrote its code. Scenery would have to be fireproofed. Alarms would have to be real and connected. Standing room tickets were banned. A red light would have to burn over every exit during a performance on its own power supply, so that in the dark you could always see the way out. Cities across America followed, and then followed further, until the rules the Iroquois was missing became the rules for every public building there is. And there was one more thing. A hardware man from Indianapolis named Carl Prinzler had meant to be in that audience, and by chance was not. Haunted by the doors that would not open, he worked with an architect to build a lock that could not trap anyone. A single bar, mounted at waist height, that unlatches the door the instant a body presses against it. No lever to figure out. No key. Just your own weight, pushing you out. They called it the panic bar. It is on the emergency doors of your school, your office, your cinema, the arena where you watch a game. You have pushed 100 times without a thought. It is there because of a theatre that called itself fireproof, and the 602 people who found out, in 8 minutes, that it was not. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next episode.